But the one thing and the most beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur and a business owner is you really have the freedom and the flexibility to work at whatever capacity or whatever way that feels best to you. And I thrive most in collaboration with other people.
Welcome to the Speaking for Profit podcast, where we talk about how to monetize your message and bring in abundance with ease. I am extremely excited about today's conversation because I don't know about y'all, but I often hear that we all need to do more public relations, right? We all need a little bit more PR to grow our business. And sometimes, to be honest with y'all, I don't know what that means. Like, who do I hire? Where do I go? Where do I start? What's the difference between PR and branding? So we're going to talk about all that. And we're also going to talk about how do we make sure that we do that with a profitable mindset? Because even though abundance is about money and monetization, it's really about going into it and having an abundance mindset around your brand in general. And today's guest, Ashley Graham, is going to break this down in a way that's going to make it easeful, abundant, and fun. So I'm excited about the conversation. I'm happy you're here. If you're watching on YouTube, go on and like and subscribe. And if you're listening, right, go on and leave us a great testimonial review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. That always helps us continue to grow the brand, continue to grow the business. And as you know, our goal, right, is to support 5,000 diverse leaders in the next 5 years, secure the bag. So if you can share it with other people, that's always going to make the work better. So I'm going to bring Ashley to the stage so we can get into this amazing conversation and talk a little bit about public relations and being conscious about it and how she came up with that. So Ashley, welcome. Welcome to the space.
Thank you so much for having me. I am very honored and excited for our conversation.
Me too. You know, like the great thing about the powerful internet, Ashley, and I don't know if you feel this way, there's a lot of crappy things that come out of it. Don't get me wrong. But the amazing thing that come out of it is relationships. And I often tell my clients, we are building a relationship and reputation business. So I'm really excited to talk to you because we met online. And I think that this is a great example of how you can find partnerships in these type of spaces. So tell our audience, who are you? If you could just name yourself in one sentence and what brings you joy. I always want to start off a conversation with joy.
If I would describe myself in one sentence, I would say that I am your charismatic and excited cheerleader and believer in all that you were made to create.
It's like a advanced cheerleader in a way, which we all need a good woo. Have you ever taken some of those like business psychology tests? I always come up with as a woo. I'm a wooer. Like, yes, go you. Even if it's not go you in the right direction, I'm still like, go you, because you committed to going you.
Yes. You know, I would almost say that I am also a wooer, but I would also say that I am the yes girl. Like anytime that something resonates with me, I'm always snapping my fingers. Yes.
I love that. So what's bringing you joy right now in your business, Ashley? What's going on that's bringing you some joy?
I love this question and I have the perfect answer for it. I am a big believer in signs and synchronicities, and just through some of the amazing conversations I've had today specifically is creating when we feel called to create. Now, I am, for anybody who knows about human design, I am a projector and I really live and thrive in my projector quality. And the one thing that I would say about projectors is when we feel called to create or feel called to show up, when it is in full alignment with who we are and it just feels so juicy and so good, that is when we create magic. That's when we create things that really serve and impact both ourselves and others. And that is just the energy that I'm living in right now. And when I feel that energy, I just embrace and bask in all of it because there's usually incredible things that happen for me through that energy and the business.
Yeah. I really appreciate you starting off this conversation with alignment, which is what you're speaking about, right? Because sometimes we do stuff when we don't feel like it, and then we don't get the result we want as business owners, and we're upset about it. And what it really is about is that energy, right? And I love that you're like reclaiming your time. Like I'll do it when I feel like it. And if I do it during that time, it's not only going to be done, but it's going to be done in a really magical way that feels good for you. How long have you been using that particular practice to create?
I would say I've gone through my own natural evolutions with that. To say that I had mastered it up until this year would be false. I think it's always
Mm,
something that I'm presented with new experiences, new opportunities to ultimately come back to that purpose of mastery around that. But and we can always touch upon this because I'm sure it'll come up again. But, as a thought leader myself, as a woman in business, but then also a woman in my personal life, I've really come to understand myself in all of my shapes and forms. Business has been a catalyst with that. But I'm just in a really incredible season and an incredible year of my life where I've just really understood myself in all of my gloriousness. And that is one thing that I've come to realize is when I can really show up in full creation that has the most impact, as I mentioned, but then also just showing up to create the things that really hit the mark and what matter most versus just creating because I feel I need to create or because I feel I need to perform. Performative actions not always been something energetic for me. And I've just learned to understand the difference between performance and alignment. And that's just the season I'm in.
definitely. And we were talking offline a few weeks ago, Ashley, and I remember you talking about you had to have a sense of patience, right? To really move into that. Cause what you're talking about, it sounds so good. And I know folks are probably listening and watching and are like, yeah, I want to do that. But I want y'all to know, like, it's work, right? Like, it's work getting to that place because capitalism is the thing that kind of keeps forcing us to create with this sense of like urgency that's really not there. It's sometimes the things that we kind of make up in our mind. So I'm just so proud of you for sticking there and getting that patience and getting that clarity because your business serves so many business owners that need this support, right? Like, really, when we're thinking about PR and our branding, our marketing, our business, our babies, right? Like, so much of this needs to be held by people who are grounded and centered. So
Yep.
I'm really thankful that you're doing that work. So tell us a little bit about the Conscious Publicist. Number one, like, how did you come up with the name and what does the name mean for you?
So, to give a quick introduction of the backstory into how the Conscious Publicist became an entity. So, the Conscious Publicist is actually a second business of mine. My business life and identity prior, I lived about 6, 7 years of my entrepreneurial journey, really kind of jumping in head first and figuring out what being an entrepreneur meant, what being a business owner meant, but then also being a woman in business and all the other things that went with that. And my previous business, I loved the name, I loved the brand, but what I realized was this core connection between our identities as a person, as a leader, and how that connected ultimately to the purpose and mission of the organizations or the businesses that we're creating. So, through the first 6 or 7 years of my entrepreneurial journey, I had started to identify myself as a conscious publicist. I am a very conscious person. I am really big into self mastery and becoming the best possible version of myself that I possibly can be in business, in my career, as well as in my personal life. And when I got the nudge that I knew I needed to pivot and make a significant change when it came just the naming convention of the business and everything that connected to that, I realized that I was in this phase of my business journey where the name on the surface level, but all of the other things that connected from the name, what I want to represent with the business, all needed to connect to this bigger, expansive identity. And that's where the Conscious Publicist came to be.
Mm. So it was through that process, right, of kind of figuring out who you need to serve, right? But also who you wanted to be in your business that the name somewhat flourished. So you said you're
Exactly.
you're a conscious person. You've got this amazing business background. What is a publicist, right? Because I get so confused, Ashley. Like, people come to me and they're like, we could put you in a Forbes article for $500, right? And they say they're a publicist. And then I have people in my inbox who are like, we can set you up so you're on a news channel, right? And then I see sometimes I'm watching TV with my dad and, they have an athlete who says something that's out of line. And my dad's like, they need a good publicist, right? So I think that there's a lot of people that feel like you all solve so many different problems. So what do publicists actually do, and how do they particularly help speakers and influencers to grow their business?
So I'm going to almost answer this question in two parts, because I feel that there is this traditional sense of what you would envision or what people might have known in the past, what a publicist, PR agency, practitioner, whatever you want to label the person who is in that industry, but then also just my understanding and my belief and my definition of a publicist and why I incorporated publicist in the name. So in a traditional sense, I feel that a publicist is somebody who basically nurtures all of the inner workings of what public recognition and public awareness means for the person that they are representing. So if I was going to say again, in the past traditional sense, you might have known publicist as somebody who almost represents them in the media and basically creates this ecosystem to where everything that is representing that individual, the publicist is basically managing. Now, what I find to be a publicist represents in today's day is it still represents all of that inner infrastructure, but I feel it goes a little bit deeper than that. The reason why I kept publicist still in the core name, the core identity, is because again, when we're nurturing public recognition, public awareness, public relations, and anything that is public facing, it really is not only nurturing the organization and the reputation of what's being in the media or outward facing, but you're also nurturing the person who is gaining that recognition, gaining that visibility, gaining that awareness, and ultimately coming back to a place of alignment, as mentioned, to where every single message, every story, every opportunity is really leading through that core mission, the core purpose of why they're gaining public recognition in the first place. Hence, that's where the consciousness kind of comes into the picture with that infrastructure of what a publicist or just PR represents as a whole.
I love that because I was on a call earlier and somebody said, you can't manifest things on the outside if you don't take care of what's within. And I think that we see so many people kind of spiral when it comes to social media and marketing themselves because they don't have the core values. They don't really know, right? So I have a list of core values and I have a list of a vision. So oftentimes when I'm having to make decisions about my brand, right? Because you have to decide who you're going to partner with, who I'm going to bring on the podcast, who's going to be good for my audience, who I'm going to bring into my community, all these things, all these decisions. Going back to that is something that gives me ease, right? Because it answers a lot of those questions. And if it doesn't check off all the way, sometimes I have to say no, even though it feels really, really good. So for you, what does it look like to support your clients day to day with that type of process?
It looks a little different just because there are different levels of support that I essentially bring clients into that partnership with me. If I was going to talk about more in the traditional sense, it is known that a publicist or a PR agency really is the one that kind of manages all of the inner workings of PR, media relations, and anything that is faced towards reputation management. Whereas our offer suite and how I want to bring my clients into partnership with me is it creates this collaborative environment where not only am I garnishing and attracting opportunities on their behalf to really serve their end goals when it comes to PR and media relations. But sometimes clients just ultimately need to get back to that level of clarity, as you were saying, getting back to those core values. And there is no one better to work with of getting back to those core values than a publicist or a PR agency or partner, because then basically once that clarity is resurfaced, then any other opportunities or any other initiatives past that ultimately come back to the end goal, which is what they want to be known for, why they're looking to serve in the public space to begin with. And it just creates alignments and synchronicities with every initiative, really.
Okay, definitely. So for you, it's kind of like customized in a way, right? Like depending on what people
To a degree, yes. And I feel it needs to be that way too, because
Mhm.
and going into one of the things that you had mentioned, it is so common that this whole understanding of what PR is has gotten a little bit loose and gotten a little gray. You know, people will slide into the DMs on Instagram saying, I can get you an X publication for X amount of dollars. At the end of the day, PR, media relations, is never guaranteed. If somebody is promising you recognition in a top tier publication, it is because they are facilitating more of an advertising process, because they will say exactly what you want them to say, which falls in that advertising realm. Whereas public relations, media relations, and really nurturing authority and credibility is it's finding the opportunities that speak ultimately to the value of who's being represented and what they offer to the media. Feel I need to bring it back full circle. But at the end of the day, when it comes to how we bring clients into partnership with us, it's really kind of not only just looking at PR and media relations, but if there is an advertising opportunity that does make sense on behalf of the client, or if there's another kind of speaking workshop opportunity, it's basically creating a collaborative environment where, yes, we're getting the end result for the client, but at the end of the day, we're being open to exploring different avenues to bring that client's message and story to the forefront. So we keep it custom to a degree. We follow obviously tools and resources and practices and strategies, but to keep it collaborative, we understand that each client and their goals might be similar, but they're vastly different. Their industries are different, and we need to be more flexible of finding ways to work with different industries and different perspectives and different types of clients.
Attention public speakers, coaches, and consultants. Ever dreamt of booking 5-figure speaking and consulting contracts? In just 5 days, I'm teaching my tried and tested system to elevate your speaking and consulting business. Forget the cold emails, bypass the salesy pitches. This challenge is about building genuine high-value connections. And here's a promise I have for you. With a commitment of just 1 to 2 hours a day for 5 days, you're going to witness transformative results. On day 1, you'll learn how to craft a business strategy without cold emails or paying to speak. Day 2 is all about you redefining your profile to attract decision makers ready to invest in your expertise. By day 3, you'll have your very own 5-figure sales system to turn contacts into clients. By day 4, we will have you automating your funnel with proven templates and scripts. And day 5, I'm going to teach you how to master the art of discovery calls with a step-by-step checklist and exclusive 5-figure sales secrets. Whether you're just stepping onto the speaking scene or you're a seasoned pro, this challenge is tailor-made for you. I'm going to teach you the exact strategies that have helped me help my clients make over $2 million in the last 2 years. The journey to a thriving 5-figure speaking and consulting business begins with this challenge. So are you ready to redefine your limits, accelerate your growth, and bask in the limelight of your success? I want you to join the 5 days to 5-figure speaking challenge now. Let's rewrite your success story together. Simply head over to speakingforprofit.com. You're going to click that button that says 5 days to 5-figure speaking gigs so you can get started with the challenge. Can't wait to see you there. All right, now back to the show. So what does a client need to show up with when they want to work with you, right? Because I know for me, I'm at the point where if people are still trying to figure out what they want to speak and consult about, right? Because I work with speakers, I work with consultants. That's not quite where my business is, right? I got a lot of free content. I could send you a free masterclass where you can do that discovery. Who am I as a speaker? But I want you to kind of have an idea of what you want to speak about. For you, does the person have to have everything together? Where do you want them to be in their process before they sign up to work with you or any publicist in the field?
With the new offer suite that I have nurtured all year for the Conscious Publicist, I have taken, again, that 6 to 7 years of just research and understanding of the first business and applied it in different ways to serve different types of clientele. So in the past, I have gotten prospective clients who knew they needed PR, because this is a common conversation or narrative, is everyone hears that they need PR. And yes, they do. But at the end of the day, you have to at least have some understanding as to why you need PR, and at least having a basic understanding as to what that looks like. Now, I also understand that there is a level of education and nurturing that comes from somebody in my position to express how PR, the infrastructure works, but then also the ways that I view PR and media relations as it is more in today's digital landscape. So I don't say that clients necessarily need to be in a particular point in the process. Our offer suite really kind of nurtures and targets them at different levels, but just a basic understanding of why they believe they need PR and what they hope to get out of getting PR is usually the 2 points that I always recommend someone knowing. But then on the personal level, understanding how you work in partnership with others is very crucial, because not only are you just hiring someone to facilitate these initiatives for you, but you genuinely have to enjoy who you're working with. I think that's just common knowledge of anybody who is in a service-based industry or service-based environment, is genuinely finding somebody that you relate to on a personal level. The conversation's always different. It's definitely more in alignment. And I feel the work is so much more expansive when you genuinely love who you're working with.
That's very true. I never really thought about that, Ashley. Thank you. You dropping gems, y'all. Like if you're watching this on YouTube, go on and put some gems in the comments, because that just really I don't know if you've seen it, but it unlocks something for me, right? Like, how do we like to collaborate, and how PR is so much more of a collaboration than a service. I don't think that I really thought about it that way.
Well, I can always just speak again from personal experience. And, I do come from a background of more of the traditional marketing world where, yes, we checked in with clients for initiatives, new marketing campaigns that they were launching and how PR supports those. But the one thing and the most beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur and a business owner is you really have the freedom and the flexibility to work at whatever capacity or whatever way that feels best to you. And I thrive most in collaboration with other people. And when it comes to PR, especially, that is something so integrated into how other people perceive you, how other people feel connected to you. You need to work with partners who believe in your mission, at the very least at the same level as you do, or believe in it even more at a level than you even see it for yourself. And that also speaks to that conscious part of the work for me is, and again, speaking to the yes girl, the cheerleader, is I often do bring this level of energy to my clients' work that I believe and see all of this opportunity that maybe they have not even given themselves permission to see for themselves. That is who you want to work with.
Yes, y'all. Y'all better go and click the link in the comments so that you could get working with Ashley, because I'm about to set up my discovery call right now, because that was just definitely a moment for me. So let's teach people, right? Because I always want to have a moment where you can give people a little bit of knowledge. Let's say there's a new speaker, they've gotten some paid opportunities, they're getting out there, they're building their influence, podcast guesting, right? Like you doing the thing. How can they start on their own to represent themselves better and start to build out some of that PR platform? How can people do that on their own? Because I know for the solo entrepreneur, they might just be like, I just want to do a few things to get started. And then, of course, they're going to connect with you because they're listening to this amazing show.
Yeah. I would say the first point, and this is probably the most important at the end of all the other things, hold yourself accountable of actually seeking opportunities that speak to PR. Kind of what I do just as a publicist, because I'm in the space of garnishing opportunities for clients, is there is a project management system that I have set up for myself as well as clients to basically keep accountability around finding opportunities almost on a weekly basis. And so some of our offers do basically educate and consult clients on how to facilitate and manage their own PR at the level that we do in-house during our retainer program for clients. But I think a lot of people oftentimes almost sit back and wait too much for the opportunities to come to them, which at the end of the day, they will if you are in a creation or in a collaborative mindset of going out there and having conversations that do ultimately come to opportunities like how we are in this podcast conversation right now. But at the end of the day, you really do have to hold yourself accountable to put yourself out there and find opportunities in very unique ways. So I always say accountability and creating a system for you to hold yourself accountable to finding opportunities.
Okay. What kind of opportunities should we be looking for though? Like does it have to be connected to our brand? Is it podcasting? Is it radio shows? Is it movies? What should we be looking to put on that list of potential opportunities?
Yeah, I'll speak first to the almost like the media verticals and opportunities that I always seek for clients. So some of the biggest verticals are podcasting, just because as a podcast guest for so many years and now a podcast host, there is so many incredible opportunities and conversations and relationships that come from the world of podcasting. So podcast interviews, podcast conversations are definitely a high vertical for us, just given just the energy of what it feels like to be in the podcasting space, and also the evergreen digital footprint that comes with podcasts.
Yes.
Secondary,
the beautiful part about it.
Yeah. Second vertical is contributing articles or contributing author opportunities. There's a number of media platforms that will offer either paid platforms to where you can become a contributing writer, or you can go through a very traditional process of sending articles that might benefit the outlet and where they're at in their content editorial calendars. And you might even get approved to actually have your article listed on platforms. As a publicist, I'm kind of the liaison and the catalyst of both finding the opportunity for a client to submit an article. We do some copywriting, and then basically we see the end product once it's published. Third vertical is commentary and quote inclusions. And I'm sure that there's a number of different ways that you would say that. But say, for instance, you go over to Forbes and you see that they have highlighted a listicle-based article where they're highlighting different leaders, different organizations, or different founders, and they provided some type of quote or expertise that contributed to that article that the journalist or the reporter was writing. Those are also vertical media opportunities that I manage for clients, just given, again, the evergreen digital footprint of what that provides from an SEO level, but also getting kind of that stamp of recognition on the platform is also brings some great awareness to that. And then fourth vertical, and this could be in a number of different facets, is anything that's relating around speaking. Now, podcasts could relate to speaking opportunities, but any either local events or national, international events where we can get clients featured as a highlighted speaker, or just doing self-hosted workshops and bringing people into the connection with them that is internally hosted. Those are other opportunities that are kind of managed and found for clients as well. There's also some other verticals, but I'm probably saying a lot of language that might be known, might not be known. So we're going to cap it there. But that just gives you an idea of, again, just like how extensive this work is, but some very, very important parts of PR and media relations, but people more so recognize this as content. There's incredible opportunities that can come from managing your own blog on your website. I have literally been invited on podcast guest or other opportunities just by having my website and just nurturing blog articles that are being published into the world. But then also just using social media as a way that speaks to PR and media relations and how others can come into partnership to create a story based on what's being published on social media Those are, again, you see that more as marketing, more of content creation, more of the influencer affiliate world. But at the end of the day, that also is underneath that PR umbrella because it speaks to how you're publicly recognized and how open and available you are for other types of opportunities outside of social media.
Nice. I hope y'all were taking notes because Ashley is giving y'all the blueprint. So take advantage of this free game, right? Get you some articles written, right? Get you some opportunities. So you mentioned two things that I think the audience might want to know more about. One, well, actually, there was three. So I'm going to, you said you work in three, so this should be pretty easy for you. So you mentioned vertical. I want to know what you mean by vertical, right? The other thing that I wrote down that you mentioned was evergreen a lot, right? And I think some folks might not know what that means. And then there's so many alphabet soups out there, Ashley, as you know, you mentioned SEO. So can you break down those three things? Can we break down what it means to be vertical, what we mean by evergreen, and then what we mean by SEO?
So by vertical, I'm referring to more or less different types of quote unquote media opportunities. So verticals is just a term, and I cannot even tell you the first time I heard the term vertical. It probably have had to come from my early years in PR and marketing, and it just really stuck with me. But when we're thinking about a vertical, I want to say that's not linear. I was going to say that as I'm trying to see the image in my mind, and it's escaping me. But when you think about it, vertical, it's basically you have media at the top of the picture, and you have all of these core categories that underneath it, but it all serves essentially media. So that's what I'm almost kind of referring to as vertical. If I find the appropriate definition of what I'm conveying there, I'll be sure to send it to you for the notes. And then evergreen, we hear the term evergreen a lot in marketing. And so evergreen, from my perspective, especially when it comes to PR and media, is it's opportunities that have the opportunity to basically recircle or recirculate. It's something that doesn't necessarily go out of style. Mm-hmm. So evergreen marketing, evergreen PR or media opportunities is basically they're written or conveyed in a way that ultimately serves audiences regardless of what season it is. That's almost kind of what I mean by evergreen, because when we're thinking about media, there are news cycles, there are trends, but evergreen pieces really can serve audiences regardless of what season, what month, because it speaks ultimately to the story and whoever's mentioned in that story. There's nothing that's more time sensitive or time relevance. It's just evergreen. And then the third term was SEO. Basically, SEO is one of the core components about digital media these days. And SEO, I don't always publish from a marketing standpoint for myself when I'm talking about PR, media relations, so on and so forth, because I don't want to be represented as a SEO strategist. But when we're thinking about how the infrastructure of the digital landscape works, is it does speak to SEO. So I'm going to give a hypothetical. So when I do bring clients into our retainer program, we do talk about SEO and how we try to find opportunities that do have a footprint that is long lasting in the digital space, and how that might serve your website traffic, your social media long term, because there's backlinking opportunities just to make sure that you are perceived as reputable when it comes to search engines. A lot of digital media and a lot of digital PR does speak to SEO and the value and the benefits of what that provides.
Nice. Thank you for breaking those down. That was really, really nice. So SEO, that's like search engine optimization. Folks, I always think about it this way. I was working with one of my homies once, and they told me that they're a SEO champion, right? I might need to connect y'all because they do some really cool work. But they were working with a client that was doing something around what is it called when you marry people? What are you considered when you're the officiant?
Ooh, yes.
Yes, there we go. So the person was wanting to be officiant for LGBT weddings, but wasn't able to really get out there. So they just switched a little bit on the website back end about SEO. So every time someone put in LGBT or put in wedding or married or same sex, any of that, they would pop up, and literally their business like went up in like a month just from doing those basic things, right? The website was fine. The language was fine. The messaging, the copy, everything was brilliant, but they needed that support so that Google could recognize them. So I think it's something that as business owners, we don't think about a lot, but I'm glad that you're bringing it up in this space, Ashley. I think that it could be really powerful for people to really sit with. How do we create assets that last forever when you're talking about evergreen? Yeah. How do we really not focus on SEO, but ask for support? Because we do not need to become, I love that you said, I don't want to be known as that expert. That's not my job, but I work with people. I collaborate with people to be able to do that. So that's really, really cool. Yeah. So the other thing that I know that people are probably wondering, and then I'm gonna let you go because I know that, you got a business to run. There's some people who are listening to this, and especially because of probably the title, seeing your bio, they're like, I want to be a publicist. I could do that. I have a background in marketing, right? What tips would you give to aspiring publicists who might be listening to this, who want to start their own agency or their own business?
I actually have an article about this over on theconsciouspublicist.com. Go to the exclusives
Shameless
page.
Plug. Yes. Say that again so folks can hear you.
When I talk about the blog space, it's like I have seen just the incredible opportunities that come from really nurturing blogging as a strategy for any type of business, any type of professional. But if I can remember correctly, one of the main core elements of what I recommended for anybody who is looking to get into PR is really understanding how to communicate with different types of people. Now, there's a written voice and then there is a speaking voice. And I believe that if you know how to create alignments between the two, that is one of the biggest attributes and biggest skill sets that you can master. Is just communications. Because at the end of the day, anything public facing is through communication. One of the biggest ways that we know how to communicate with other people is through our verbal voice, and now in the digital space, our written voice. Everything is around communications. So the more that you can strengthen the way that you communicate with others, it will serve immensely in this space. But then also, I would say from that article that I hit on was just understanding how you connect with people also. I come from a place where I want to serve very purpose and mission-driven people, nonprofits who serve, social change, economical change, but then also working with leaders who have this strong written and verbal voice to speak on things that matter. That is really who I want to serve, because I also portray those qualities. And I think ultimately, if you just understand and know yourself and who you want to serve, because you all share a very cohesive end goal, that will bring you opportunities that are definitely more in alignment with yourself, but it also makes the work just so much more fulfilling than just being in a 9-to-5 mentality and just working a job.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Right. Like, and kind of spinning yourself on those wheels. So before you go, I'm going to ask you this question, because people always want to know about money, right? Like, I think that's what most people listen to podcasts. I know I used to, especially when I was working my 9-to-5, drop some gems about the money. How has helping people with their PR, like what kind of success have you seen in the bag, right? Because I think there's so many tools we can use. We hear about blogging, TikTok, and I was just on a call with a client who's doing amazing on LinkedIn. And they're like, I heard I need to start a TikTok. And I was like, can we just focus on one thing at a time? Like, goodness. Like, tell us about a success story on like how PR maybe has helped one of your clients either land a bigger client or just really secure the bag, because we always want to connect it back to profit. I think it's so important that we do things that actually move our business in that way. I do understand it's important to be conscious and connected to our vision, but at the end of the day, actually, we got to pay these bills, right? We got to do this, and we're trying to get financially free. So can you share one of those stories with us?
So to say that I'm able to know from my clients how PR has translated into investments, I actually don't have access to those numbers, or I actually have never been in a case where that has been a part of the conversation. However, there's two takeaways. Through working with a nonprofit, we utilize TV opportunities and broadcast media as a way to get their story out there for a very specific campaign. Now, through just conversations with the internal team, because I do perceive myself not just a publicist with my clients, I perceive myself as a partner, that they did receive donations that came in directly from that news segment. I don't know exactly the number. I can't tell you exactly how much it was, but I do know that just from this one particular TV spot that was maybe less than 5 minutes, if that, received a number of donations from people in that area that wanted to support the nonprofit. That's one mini case study that I can speak to when it comes to the financials, again, without knowing what the exact number was. But on the digital side, that I feel, again, speaks to that evergreen environment, is one of the most incredible things about PR and media relations. And I do geek out about data and analytics. I can see it from a monetary standpoint when it comes to numbers, just not money numbers. But syndicated media is incredible. And again, that might even be a term that people are like, what's syndicated media? But syndicated media is basically, just this way that media correlates between other outlets that want to essentially piggyback off of larger outlets to get the same story distributed to their platforms. So I had a client who was picked up in Newsweek. And when I was looking at the back end of one of our media monitoring tools, we noticed that just this one inclusion into this digital article ended up appearing on over 35 different platforms in the Southern California area, which is where the client is based. So they had a huge spike in website traffic that week once the media actually was published. It got them more leads to their sign-up page, and essentially basically is now in their CRM tool to basically nurture the types of outreach to essentially bring them in as actual clients. So again, I don't know the numbers from an investment standpoint, but what I do see is the reach capabilities and the reach impressions of what comes from this inner working of media and impressions. So
yes,
and
Ashley,
at the end of the day, it always circles back. I believe in abundance, and I believe even though if it's not immediate, it does come back and circle back, because people also need to know just who you are. They need to build that know, like, and trust factor with you before you buy. And you just essentially have to kind of play the game in the beginning before that happens. But it always hits. Always.
And that was brilliant, because I think for the person who's listening, who's like, how do I get traffic, right? That's how sometimes people use the language. How do I get more eyes on my content? How do I get you have a prized product, right? You have an amazing speaking ability, but you can't get enough eyes on it. You need to hire Ashley, like right now, right? Like, get into business and get it happening, because those numbers are huge, y'all. Like, to be able to be seen by that many people. And I love that you're working in different industries, especially nonprofits, right? Because we know the work that they're doing is so important. I know even me as like a business owner, oftentimes I want to give back, but I'm unaware of what's happening locally and how I can support it. And your work is able to elevate that so that the givers are connected with the people who need to receive. So some super powerful stuff, Ashley. Thank you so much for like dropping all these gems. You gave us so much information. How can people like support your work and build partnerships with you?
Yeah. So if you just want to connect, the best centralized hub for understanding who we are, what we do is, of course, our website, consciouspublicist.com. And I will say our exclusives page, I'm a big supporter of education, of at least my perspective, my understanding of the work that we do and how I can kind of pay that forward. So our exclusives page, which is essentially our blog page, is a great resource just to understand different parts of PR and media relations. But then also our podcast is a great place. Yeah. I think you can find everything you're looking for on our website. But I will say, if at any moment that anything that I mentioned, especially around our offer suite, like I said, we have a number of offers and how we bring clients in partnership with us, depending on the place that they're in. But our VIP days are great. I'm really excited to get those out into the world. And of course, we do have a retainer program. If you're saying, I don't want to think about any of this, I'd rather hire someone else to think about it 24/7. That is where I come in.
Nice, nice. So we'll be sure to put that in the show notes, folks, so we make it really accessible for you so that you can check out this work. And we'll also just make sure to put you said the exclusive, right? The blog link there so folks can really connect with that. Because I think, like you said, building know, like, and trust is so important. And y'all are just starting it, right? By listening to this amazing episode with Ashley. But go deep dive into the way that she really looks at conscious publication. I don't know how to say it. Publicizing.
Conscious PR.
Conscious PR. There we go. Conscious PR. And see if it's alignment, because I think it's important that you have an understanding of the way that she's going to do the work and it's connected to your larger vision. So Ashley, thank you again so much for being here. Anything else you want to share with the audience before we head out?
Nothing comes to mind. I'm just kind of re-percolating on everything I mentioned. I'm like, I'm sure I could have added so many more points.
Definitely. Well, what we'll have to do, is definitely have you come back, right? Maybe in the next quarter or so. And I would love to invite you to host a session, in Speaking for Profit University. I think that my clients, right, could really, really utilize hearing just your method and your thought about it. Even you going through just that concept of the vertical, I think could be really powerful for folks. So I'm excited to continue this partnership and continue working with you.
Likewise.
Definitely. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Speaking for Profit podcast, where we talk about everything around monetizing your message. I hope that this was helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, peace.